Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat.
And a joy good morning to you. This is Newsline from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. Usually we're live. Today this is a recording that we've made a day or so ago. And our guest this morning is that firebrand politician from the left, Mr. Vasudeva Nanayakkara. Very good morning to you, Mr. Nanayakkara.
Good morning.
It's wonderful to have you, of course. And I was hoping to ask you, a few days ago we celebrated, or marked, I withdraw the word celebrated, so I say marked, 70 years of parliamentary democracy. On the same day was the 100th birth anniversary of Mr. Peter Kenneman. Now then, my question to you really is, 70 years of parliamentary democracy, how fares democracy now, 70 years later?
Today we have no democracy except for the pretense of democracy. Democracy has remained shut since the last election. Democracy that should have been in play by way of local government elections have been put off up to now. Similarly, in a surreptitious manner, the government had a bill passed contrary to the Supreme Court determination, and yet again for the postponement of the provincial council elections. Now, what damn democracy is this?
Mr. Faisal Mustafa says that the minister in charge of the local government and provincial council and so on, Mr. Mustafa says that these are two separate matters. And he also admitted finally that it was political expediency. But the issue that they're trying to deal with in terms of the Provincial Council's Amendment Act and those various amendments, in effect outweighs everything else. It's political expediency, yes, but these matters like the changing of the system. Yeah, outweighs the other, and it's politically expedient. He's admitted to being politically expedient.
When once you admit that it is political expediency, there is no defending of the action thereafter. The point is, if these other changes in the system has to be brought about, well and good, but the elections don't have to be postponed.
But then don't you think he's been in an unenviable position of having in three sets of councils the election under one system and in the other six in using another system?
No. Once you have got the new system in place, we can apply it for the elections on the next round.
Right.
Or dissolve all the provincial councils and have elections all over again. That is far better than postponing an election, which is a denial of people's right, which is a denial of the people's sovereignty. So therefore, the crime is the denial of sovereignty.
I see. So what you say is, even if we have to have another election,
second election, that would be
under the new system.
Yes, that would be a lesser burden than the crime of postponing the right of people to vote.
But are you saying this only because you have taken into account of the political realities on the ground, and you know that the people aren't very happy at the moment, and so you're sensing some sort of victory for the party that you're from, or the group that you're from? So
no, to the contrary, I am reflecting the mind of the people and agitation in the minds of the people about them having been denied their right to intervene in between major elections.
But do you think that do you think that, let's put it another way. Suppose you were in government now, and you're in this hypothetical situation that you're in this government, and you are facing a series of issues that the current government is actually facing. On all fronts, we have become nothing more than an IMF economy. We are doing our politicians, our leaders are being urged and almost sort of blackmailed into following the guidelines imposed by the IMF and those powers. Corruption has become endemic, and there is the small matter of the bond commission, and then there is this other small matter of the Central Expressway, and a minister who is obviously lying to the people who elected him, lying to the honourable, the most reverend clergy, and so on. And so, in all this, if you were on the other side, would you actually hold elections?
You have said most of what I should be saying. Thank you for that. Secondly, we won't get into a situation when such issues will become the most prominent fact. We were in a government, and we but yet we had elections in time. So that is the demonstration of how you respect democracy. Not paying homage to democracy, lip service to democracy, but acting to the contrary, as the present government does.
So you have no doubt in your mind whatsoever that actually this government is disinterested in holding elections because they realize that they will lose.
They are terrified, to tell you the truth.
What are they terrified of?
They are terrified of a stinking defeat that would be inflicted on them by the people, which will immediately pull the ground under their feet apart.
So what's the alternative then?
Because the legitimacy lies only on the basis of a mandate to the people. The moment the people's mandate is not there, the ground under the feet is torn apart.
So what's the alternative?
Alternative is to have this government resign and the elections to be held. General elections to be held.
What about who will emerge, do you think?
Well, I think the joint opposition can find an alliance, and such alliance should be able to record a major victory.
But with their terrible, I'd say appalling record in terms of the way they've dealt with the minority issues, do you seriously think that the minorities will vote?
Minorities are rethinking about us and about this government and about this government's connection to the American imperialist strategy. And therefore the Muslims in the East and the Muslims in general are concerned that there is going to be a deal made with the TNA and the diaspora in order to subjugate the Muslims in the Eastern province. By the combination of, or by the linking up of the two provinces, where the Tamils will have a huge majority over the Muslim people. Thus displace the Muslims' rights and status of representation in the Eastern Provincial Council. On the other hand, Muslims know that there is a hunt down of the Muslims by the imperialists, with whom this government has very, very close cooperation, and therefore Muslims believe that the government would be a collaborator of the imperialist forces that would extend the hunt of the Muslims beyond the Middle Eastern region and even up to Sri Lanka, particularly because the Americans have an eye on Trincomalee, and their present patronage given to the Tamil people is for no good reason other than their need to have a friendly people when they walk in. With this new constitution,
yes.
Well, I'll stop.
On that note, we'll go for a short break. Don't go away. After all, this is Newsline. And welcome back to Newsline, where we are in the company of Mr. Vasudeva Nanakara. Mr. Nanakara, tell me now, we were talking about the minorities and whether the minorities would be ready to come out and support an alternative to the present National Unity Government. What's your take?
Part of the minorities will move away.
Yeah.
Association with the government for their own respective reasons. The Muslims are worried about joining up with the two provinces. Therefore, they will move away. The Muslims, on the other hand, feel that the government is in cahoot with the imperialist forces of America who are hunting down the Muslim people. And where millions are being made refugees on account of that hunt down. And then on the other hand, the Tamil people are worried whether the favors that the American imperialists are showing them is only a mode through which they will come into occupy part of their land, including the Trincomalee Harbour, with the grace of this government.
So you're hopeful. And then what will happen?
Then of course a new government will become formed after general election. Until then we can have the other elections where the government will have to eat the bitter fruit. And then those councils will become established. Ultimately this government will not be able to stand on its feet because it has lost its legitimacy. And then the two-third majority agreement to resolve the parliament might be the only way out of an anarchic situation.
But to be fair, Mr. Vasudeva, they had 9 years. They had 9 years to fix most things. They fixed the war, of course, but they had 9 years. And are you telling me that this time round, if they were to win in your hypothetical, if they were to secure the necessary numbers to be in Parliament, what are they going to do differently? Or is it going to be the same old rogues doing the same old thing?
Well, all people learn out of experience, and defeat itself is a good experience, and therefore we have to rethink our program, and that is being put in place. At least some of the left parties are doing it, and it proposes to have it placed before the JO, and we will canvass for it. We will have an alliance, but we will remain independent in canvassing the program that we will place before the JO. In the event of election and the formation of a government, we will be part of that alliance as against this alliance, which is in power. But we are not definitely made up our minds about taking office under that government until we are sure there is a new program. We can be in the alliance, but yet be critical.
Do you think in that future proposed sort of government, do you think that the leaders of this, whoever the leaders will be, do you think that they will revisit certain investigations and bring charges against this government, or are they going to do what this government is doing in terms of them, which is nothing?
I cannot comprehensively answer that question because I do not know to what extent this government is holding back the investigations against the important people of the last government, though such accusation is made. Secondly, if a government is set up of our JO and the allies, there will be no respite the people will demand and we will demand that the investigations about the Prime Minister and his relationship to this bond scam and the connections of everybody else of that party to the other major crimes of corruption will have to be investigated, not with a sense of vindictiveness, but with a sense of generosity.
But we have the Prime Minister, Mr. Wickremesinghe, on record where he says that he will not initiate any investigations against President Chandrika Kumaratunga, and then he comes back again on the same stage. He comes back a few seconds later and he clarifies and he says, well, don't worry, I won't be bringing any investigations against Mahinda Rajapaksa either. He's my friend, and as a rule of thumb, as a rule, I don't go after my friends. So this is what our Prime Minister says. So when he says that, I'm chillingly concerned for the public good.
About Chandrika Bandaranaike, he is correct.
Right.
He is holding back the investigations. I have made a complaint 10 years ago about Chandrika and her involvement in the corruption regarding the marine services,
Lanka Marine Services,
Lanka Marine Services deal.
Yes.
That investigation was never done. 10 years now. I have most recently also written a letter. I have received a reply to say the matter is being looked into. At least I received a letter this time.
Indeed. You're a lucky chap.
Then I have written to the Presidential Commission. Did I say this before? That the Prime Minister should be investigated in view of the circumstances that I have set out. So I also got a letter in reply to say, they have received my letter and the matter is under consideration. So I am hopeful.
But do you think that anybody in their right sense of mind will want to summon the Prime Minister of the country to come and make a statement? Has it happened in Sri Lanka before?
Not in Sri Lanka. Not in Sri Lanka. And I believe everything depends on the...
But isn't it, I want to put it to you like this. The Prime Minister, and this is in the context of democracy in Parliament the last 70 years, right? I want to put it to you like this. This is the man, the Prime Minister, 40 years in Parliament, 23 years the leader of the United National Party, 4 times Prime Minister of this country, and the person who led the United National Party to an unprecedented number of defeats at various electoral levels. Now, this is the same man who is also very fond of speaking about the Westminster style of democracy, or Westminster style politics, as he put it. He has lectured Mrs. Bandaranaike and so on about it. Now then, what I want to ask you is this. If he's so very fond of the Westminster system, in which Westminster system is it that a person who comes and admits to interfering with the bond process when he has no direct relationship to the central bank in the sense that there's a monetary board, don't you think that he ought to have resigned a long time ago? That's what they would have done in Westminster.
Yes. In Britain or in any European developed democracy, this kind of misconduct, like that of the Prime Minister, would have been sacrilege to democracy. And therefore, he or she wouldn't have been able to survive in any position.
The other thing is, I wonder if you have an explanation or a theory, at any rate. Why is it that the international community, the sometimes self-appointed watchdogs of all things good and wonderfully democratic, why is it that they are being conspicuous only for their silence? We have serious matters going on in this country. We have the Supreme Court of this country who say that the people's franchise cannot be delayed without, unless of course you get permission from the people, right? Then you have corruption after corruption after corruption taking place. These are not claims. These are matters backed up by evidence. Why is it that the so-called watchdog committee, why are they silent?
These international watchdogs are the Americans, the Europeans and their allies, who are the allies of these rogues. So therefore they have to protect them, or at least remain silent, though embarrassed.
But you know, we have ministers, in this case, one instance is Lakshman Kiriyalla, who's interfered shamelessly in this national procurement process. Shamelessly interfered in it.
Central Highway.
The Central Expressway, Section 3, yes. Shamelessly interfered, trying to bring in one company that didn't supply a bid bond, another company that after evaluation is found out that they're disqualified and lack the expertise, and then he tries this wonderful gundu out of the blue. You know, he must be a magician, because he's saying in his cabinet paper, he's asking one company who's won the bid to consider, to form a consortium with the failed bidder. Then you have the Prime Minister who says, oh my dear, this is a very complicated terrain. So why are you giving an inexperienced company a difficult job to do?
Well, they have given the excuse that the representations of the ambassador of Japan had to be considered.
Well,
and that is the excuse. Well, for that excuse, or even for that excuse, what has been done is not justifiable and cannot be anything that we can accept.
But that's a complete lie, because I have a copy of the, in fact, we'll be able to play it on the screen, and I will play it on the screen. I have a copy of the letter sent by the official accredited representative of Japan in Sri Lanka, better known as the Ambassador of Japan in Sri Lanka. In it, he's very, very clear indeed. He says that the government of Japan is in no position to make claim other than to respect the legal and lawful tender procedure of the government of Sri Lanka, including on the Section 3 of the highway. Now, that is the official position.
Well, you have it with you.
Yes, I will give it to you. But there is also another letter that has been sent by a consultant, claimed to be a consultant. I say claimed because in terms of the Japanese ambassador, we know that he has provided his credentials and has been accepted by the president of our country on the behalf of the people of Sri Lanka as being the official rep of the government of Japan. But there's another consultant, supposedly a consultant to the government of Japan, who has written a letter to Mr. Kiriyalla, and in which he says that Fujita, this company, this failed company, failed because the Sri Lankan authorities evaluated them and didn't find them meeting the standards. So that consultant is writing a letter and saying, Fujita is a very good company. We will be very pleased or grateful or whatever if you give them, if you consider them. Nowhere does he say, give the job to them, otherwise you won't get your loan. The loan, by the way, is from a commercial bank. So, Mr. Kiriyalla is completely misleading. He's misleading the president, misleading the clergy. I mean, at the end of the day, he's just fooling himself.
This is nothing surprising, taking the track record of this government about corruption. The coal deal, about which the Supreme Court said our conscience is shocked the way that the coal tender has been awarded. so on goes their record.
Yes.
So, Kirialla, not very much unknown for his bias and his choices, makes this statement, and if the Japan's consultant or the Japan's ambassador were to make a statement to the contrary, Kirialla will have no legs to stand on. Because Fujita is supposed to be a favored company of the Japanese government, for which reason the Japanese government has represented that Fujita be included in one way or the other. This is what they have said.
This is the claim made by Mr. Kirialla.
Yes. So Kirialla should be saying this while the statement of the Japanese
just before we go away, when we broke the bond story on national television, 8th of March, it was, so on the 17th of March, 9 days later, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe deemed it fit to make a statement in Parliament. He said he changed the system. He wanted it changed.
Yes.
Today we know where the bond is.
Yes.
We know where that is. Then when we did the same thing with the Central Expressway, 3 or 4 days after that, he deemed it fit to come to Parliament and try and camouflage everything, saying that he saved 25 billion. Well, he didn't save 25 billion. He actually spent 11 billion more than the engineers estimate. However, all this is done to mask the real problem. The real problem is a departure from procedure. That is what happened at the central bank over the bond issue. They departed from procedure. This is not Mr. Arjuna Mahendran's personal legacy from his parents or from anybody else or his uncle or whoever, and nor was it the legacy of Arjuna Aloysius's grandfather. This was the public's money, and Mr. Mahendran departed from procedure. Mr. Kirialla has departed from procedure. That's the bottom line. And I ask you, Mr. Vasudeva Nanayakkara, why is the Prime Minister going out of his way to mask this departure from procedure?
It is worse than departure from procedure. It is active intervention in order that certain choices are made which are favored for one or the other for very good consideration, as we are now beginning to note. I have a friend of mine telling me that one of those who had paid 10 million to the ministry, I would say Ministry of Highways, for getting subcontracts in the third phase of the expressway, Central Expressway. Similarly, there had been 10 others, subcontractors, who had similarly paid such amounts. I had it said by a person who heard from the man who gave the money.
Absolutely shocking.
It is.
And so does it make you sad then that this is the state of our democracy 70 years on?
Democracy in these countries are embedded in corruption, or corruption is embedded in democracy. That's how these countries go. We need to have a total revamp of the democracy in order to rid it of corruption. And that will happen only when the true people of this country are made representatives in the government. What I mean by true people or true representatives of the people are the people at the bottom. People at the bottom are not anywhere in this parliament. People at the middle are not in the parliament.
And Mr. Kirialla, he at a press conference following the president's suggestion that they have an open, transparent process with the media in attendance, at that meeting, when the president was away in the United Nations, Mr. Kirialla, in response to a question posed by a journalist, says, well, I'm a citizen of this country. What do you mean? Just because you're a citizen of this country, so are we. We're not going about doing all these nonsense, are we? Mr. Vasudevan Anakra, we've come to the end of an entertaining morning. Thank you very much. But
Thank you.
You must come on one of our other longer programs, Face the Nation perhaps.
Very well.
And where we'll have 2 hours to discuss these matters.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For being
Thank you
on
very
Newsline.
much.
And that's it from Newsline. Take care. God bless.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.